What's up guys, welcome back to a brand new video on Lexalexus, and within the blink of an eye, 2 days ago I released my week 17 score predictions, and today I'm releasing my week 18 score predictions. They're going to be short and sweet, simply because I do need to revise, but I have found a tiny bit of time today to predict these games. I'm also going to be reacting to what games took place in the midweek set of games, so I'll be giving my reaction to those, and we'll also be predicting the upcoming games as well. As always guys, the same procedures. If you leave your score predictions in the comments down below, you guys can score some points on the Lexalexus Football Prediction League, where an update will be issued very soon. If you guys like what you see, please smash the like button. It really does help the growth of this channel. Let's go for 50 likes, that'll be absolutely amazing. Please do hit the subscribe button too, it really does help as well. And please share the channel as well. All three of these things are free to do and they really help. But without any further ado, let's start covering my score predictions for week 18. We've got a massive game to start things off. We've got Sheffield United and Sunderland. Sheffield United on the rise and Sunderland having a very slow but sturdy decline. So Sheffield United are continuing with their confidence. Their run of form is very strong at the moment. They blitzed past Oxford with pretty much no problem whatsoever. I'm really liking Lexalexus' involvement with Sheffield United. He's done really well. Tyrese Campbell also getting on the score sheet as well, which is nice to see. Sunderland were involved in another draw. It's really been quite comedic at this point with the amount of draws that Sunderland are having. I believe it's 6 draws in a row actually, so quite substantial for Sunderland, but because of that they're slowly but surely losing the pace that the top of the championship is having. And this is a huge game for Sunderland to see if they are really going to be competitive within the top half of the table. If this is a draw or a defeat for them, then this will really start setting the pressure that maybe they're not quite ready to be a top 2 side yet, but they could certainly be within the mix within a playoff team. Prediction here, I don't think I could look past Sheffield United at the moment. They look really confident, really strong. They're scoring so many goals at the moment. I don't think it'll be a high-scoring game, though. I think it'll be very tight. I'm going to go for a 1-0 victory to Sheffield United. I think it's going to be close, but I do think with home advantage and their confidence with their momentum at the moment, I think that might take them to victory. However, you know, this is going to be a really close game. I'll be really interested to hear your thoughts as well. Next up, we see a pretty intriguing encounter of Middlesbrough and Hull, because both teams will be expected a reaction based on their previous midweek performance. So Middlesbrough were entitled to the commentator's curse, or the prediction curse as it will, because everyone got a bit excited over their past couple of games. They've played against Blackburn, who've not played for a while, and Blackburn beat them. 1-0 it was. They didn't even find a goal, Middlesbrough, which was a direct contrast to how they've been in their last couple of games or so. So it's just, you know, another example of how the championship is so unpredictable. Hull will be expecting a response for a different reason. They have dismissed Tim Walter of his duties as Hull City manager, which doesn't come up as a surprise. It is the longest losing streak out of all the teams in the championship, with 4 consecutive defeats. They are now in the bottom 3, and right now, if they do not get their act together, the teams above them are going to start clawing away. So Hull are going to expect results very quickly. They've not hired anyone in yet as of recording, but yesterday they made the news that Tim Walter has been relieved of his duties. That could mean that Hull might actually have a positive reaction. We saw how Cardiff were when Errol Baloo was dismissed, and how they had a good spike of momentum for a tiny bit. This is honestly really tough for me, because I don't know what version of Middlesbrough we're going to get. Are we going to get the high scoring one we've seen in the past couple of games? Or is this going to be a repeat of what we saw against Blackburn, where they, you know, had good passages of play, but just, you know, not really finding that killer pass? I think, and just being in typical championship fashion, I'm going to predict a Hull shock 2-1 away victory. Probably no one will be doing this, but I'm going to be a bit brave this week, and I'm going to say that Hull are going to have a managerial bounce, and they'll pick up all 3 points here. So let me know what you think of that in the comments, because I think I'm going absolutely crazy. But it's the Championship. You've got to expect some of these crazy results sometimes. Next up, we see Oxford and Millwall going head-to-head. Both have had very different outcomes in their midweek games. So Oxford, of course, were involved in that 3-0 defeat against Sheffield United. It does put them in a pretty perilous position. I believe it's 3 defeats in a row for Oxford now, and only above the bottom 3 within a matter of points. Millwall having a much better season, but they did not play their midweek game. They were involved in a postponement due to a power outage at Fratton Park. I can only feel really, really bad for the Millwall fans who were waiting around actually an hour beyond kickoff. It took an hour after kickoff was supposed to happen for the announcers to say that the game's going to be postponed. So do feel a bit bad for Millwall fans travelling all that way and then essentially waiting around for an hour to be told that they're going to have to go back home. So certainly it could give them maybe a little bit of a motivation to get a result in this game potentially. Oxford certainly are not looking as defensively solid as they were. In fact, they never really have, but they've been able to always find a way out of these sticky situations. But teams are starting to figure out how to play against them, and unfortunately with Millwall, who are so experienced and know how to deal with these types of games, I think Millwall will win this one. As a prediction, I think I'm going to go for a 2-0 away victory to Millwall. I could see them going back to winning ways, and essentially they're definitely going to be wanting to give their fans something after they were due a disservice from their last game that didn't take place. So I'm going to go 2-0 Millwall. Could be an interesting one, this one though. We'll see if Oxford can hit back. Next up, we're predicting Watford and QPR. Both London clubs and both with a win in their midweek game as well. So Watford are looking pretty comfortably within the playoff places at the moment. They managed to get a narrow 1-0 win over Bristol City. A tough game for Bristol City's point of view, considering the fact they've had to play Burnley recently, Sunderland recently, had to play Sheffield United recently. They've played so many tough teams in very quick succession, of course. But this was another narrow defeat for Bristol City's point of view. Reece Andrews being the goal scorer for Watford that managed to give them all 3 points. And right now, it's putting Watford in a really commanding position, actually. And they're looking relatively comfortable for that playoff spot at the moment. With QPR, they've got their own mission, Project Survival. And right now, they are doing exactly what they need to do. And that is finding some points. They drew in their last home game against Stoke City, where I thought there were some positives, but just, again, not quite enough for the 3 points. They backed themselves this time, took on a Cardiff side low on confidence, and beat them by 2-0. And I'm annoyed at myself. I did not back a QPR win. I can't remember if I backed them a win or a draw, because honestly, I called it. I called that QPR would feel like that they've get the confidence to get a result, and they did. So I do think this game is not exactly ideal for QPR to try and continue on their form, because Watford have been really good at Vicarage Road this season. So honestly, as a prediction, whilst I think it will be competitive, I more or less see Watford winning this one by 2-1, I think. But honestly, if QPR get an away point, it wouldn't surprise me. I do think there is now some fight within that squad. They are within only 2 points of getting out of the bottom 3. So right now, QPR are not down and out yet. They are still throwing their punches to try and get them out of the predicament that they find themselves. But I do think, despite the spirit though, I do think it will be a Watford win. Next up, we got Blackburn and Leeds. Both of them enjoying a win in their midweek set of games. So Blackburn, as I mentioned, they beat Middlesbrough. Certainly, I think they were really written off, actually. But they did win their last away game before then, before that international break. They had a long period. I thought they wouldn't be sharp. And whilst they did allow Middlesbrough to play their football, Blackburn punished them. I think it was Dominic Hyam who got the goal for Blackburn that managed to give them the difference. And actually, that win has made things a bit interesting from the teams clustering up just outside of the top 6. I'll tell you what, if Blackburn can actually get some consistency, they might be able to regain that top 6 place. But They are facing, in my opinion, one of the most complete teams in the Championship at the moment, which is Leeds United. They're finding a way to get through results. They beat Luton by 3-0, put under the pressure a couple of times by Luton, but they managed to cope with it well, took their chances, and ultimately just were a lot more confident on the day. Now, away from home, I'm not as convinced with Leeds as I have been at Ellen Road. Of course, their last away game was that bonkers 4-3 win over Swansea. I don't think we'll see as many goals here. Blackburn's home form has been good, but it has tailed off just before the international break. This will be their first home game after the international break, so we'll see if they have, restored a little bit of fear factor within Ewood Park. But as a prediction, I'm going to back a draw, actually. I have a sneaky feeling that Blackburn could be a frustrating team for Leeds. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Why not? I think, again, I'm going to try and mix things up and do the predictions that maybe not everyone else is doing. I think my predictions were quite hit and miss in the midweek, so I'm going to throw a couple of these odd results now and again, maybe with the hope of my predictions improving. Obviously, it could backfire, but ultimately, it's part of the risk taking in predictions. So I'll go for a draw. Are any of you predicting a draw? Let me know. Next up is Bristol City and Plymouth, both who have suffered defeat in midweek. Bristol City a narrow defeat against Watford, where they did have their moments, but ultimately Watford were just slightly too good for them on the day. That certainly cannot be said for Plymouth Argyle. A 6-1 battering from Norwich. And this is a little bit of a sweet taste revenge, I guess, if you remembered Plymouth absolutely battering Norwich last season at home park. I think Norwich just gave them a slight taste of their own medicine this time around. It was quite extraordinary. I mean, Borja Sainz again, certainly one of the players of the season so far, with his second hat-trick. Chernak with a goal. You even had Shane Duffy getting on the score sheet as well. Slimani is doing pretty well as well, which I'm really pleased that he's actually gained some good form in the Championship this time around as well. But I think this time around here with this game is a tough one. A draw actually wouldn't be too surprising. I think Plymouth, prior to the battering against Norwich, they actually pulled off an away point against Derby. So I do think they are now starting to be a bit competitive, but obviously I think that Norwich game, we'll see this as an outlier. It could potentially be them kind of scathing on the way that they've just been finding ways to get points and wins, and maybe Norwich was a bit of a wake-up call. But I am expecting a bit of a response for Plymouth here. Bristol City, though, they've been playing some really tough teams, just narrowly against, in terms of the scoreline. So that's why their form hasn't been too great. But they have played a really, really tough batch of teams recently. This one, I see a more realistic win for Bristol City. And honestly, I think that's what we're going to see. I think we're going to get a 2-1 win to Bristol City. I think it'll be close, because I think Plymouth will make it competitive. But I think Bristol City will go back to winning ways, and they'll start continuing climbing up the top half of the table. What a huge game this is going to turn out to be. We've got Coventry going up against Cardiff City. Both teams on the brink of dropping into the relegation zone. Cardiff 1 point ahead of the bottom three. Coventry only 2 points ahead of the bottom three. And major developments as well. So Cardiff are still managerless, despite Errol being one of the first managers to be sacked in the Championship. Coventry have taken their time, but they have appointed a new manager, and it was the favourite from the start, Frank Lampard. He has confirmed that he is taking on his second Championship job as Coventry City's new boss. I'm really interested to see how he gets on. I think he had a 40+% win rate with Derby County. It led them to the playoffs, of course. Can he do the same for Coventry? Now, the fact that Coventry are only 2 points clear of the relegation zone, Frank Lampard doesn't have a huge margin of error here. He needs to get it right as soon as he can, because otherwise Coventry will still start sleepwalking back into the relegation zone again. I think with this game, I actually think we might see a really positive response from Coventry initially. It's just going to be interesting to see if Frank Lampard can sustain it. As a prediction, I'm actually going to go for a 3-1 victory to Coventry. Cardiff are reminding me of Hull a little bit currently. Their confidence is not quite there, and I do think Coventry, now that they've got someone at the helm, I think they will be able to go through. I mean, losing against Burnley I don't think is any disgrace, to be honest, because Burnley are proving to be one of the toughest teams to play against. But I think here, Coventry should smell blood and try and pounce on it. So I'm going to go for a 3-1 win, maybe a bit brave, but I just sensed Coventry will get a managerial bounce, and Cardiff at the moment are just not looking confident enough, sadly. Next up, we see Norwich going up against Luton Town. Interesting. So, Norwich involved in that 6-1 win over Plymouth. Certainly, probably not going to have an easier game all season, unfortunately. They certainly proved their way in terms of an attacking point of view, and were just really, really confident. And I think they were waiting Norwich to have that moment where things clicked in attacking sense, and they did. They did really, really well, actually, in that game. Luton were involved in that 3-0 defeat against Leeds United. Whilst they had spells of goodness on the ball, again, just conceding too many chances, defensively looking quite slack, and just being a bit slow as well. But I sense here in this game, Norwich will be feeling very confident, Luton not as much. And I think naturally, I think that's going to help Norwich get a win here. I think as a prediction, I am going to back a 2-1 victory to Norwich. I don't want to write off Luton, but I honestly see at the moment, despite having a pretty full squad, they're not quite hitting the same standards I was expecting them at the moment. And I just think Norwich now, with that win, I think it will give them a bit of a rise. So I'll be predicting that, but let me know what you think as well in the comments down below. Next up is Preston and West Brom. I can't lie, guys, I think I sense a draw happening here. So Preston were involved in a 0-0 draw over Stoke City, a game that didn't really explode into life. The only eye-catching moment was Freddie Woodman getting red carded for handing the ball outside the box near the end of the game. It didn't affect Preston, luckily for them, and they did manage to hold on for that draw. West Brom were also involved in a 0-0 draw, this time against Sunderland. And right now, the drawing from West Brom, I said it was Sunderland, is almost a joke at this point. 8 draws in their last 9 matches. It's insane, isn't it? And because of that, West Brom are slowly losing the momentum to keep up within the top 6. But they are still within that mix of sides who are trying to establish themselves as a team in that region of the table. Preston have their own problems. They need to try and pick up more points to get themselves away from being pulled into the bottom 3. They've got a tiny cushion, but right now, if they go on a winless run, which they're currently on, they will be starting to be pulled back in there. So, different pressures for both of these sides. But as a prediction, I think it's going to be a draw. Shocker, right? I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I think Preston will find a goal. Osmajic coming back, I think is going to be good for them. West Brom, though, they'll just make sure they don't lose. So I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw. Let me know what you think as well of that scoreline. Next up, we've got Stoke and Burnley. And I can't lie, I think this one's going to be low scoring as well. I already mentioned about Stoke. Probably they would be the most aggrieved out of themselves and Preston for not picking up 3 points in the way that they did in their last game. Burnley were involved in a 2-0 win over Coventry. So impressive that they managed to score some goals this time. I think it's actually the first time they scored 2 goals in over 6 matches, which is insane. But also, it's 4 clean sheets in a row for Burnley. So I think they are really starting to get through this defensive solidity now, and they know exactly how they need to move the ball for it. It's now just a question whether they can find the goals in all of those games. Stoke are going through an unbeaten run at the moment, but it has resulted in 3 draws in a row. So they definitely want to be trying to convert that into 3 points, just so that they can climb up the table. They're currently sitting in 14th at the moment. I think here as a prediction, a 0-0 draw really wouldn't surprise me. I might go for squad quality here, and I'm going to narrowly back Burnley for 1-0. Probably dangerous, knowing that Stoke are unbeaten. That's his moment of time for a good couple of games. I just back Burnley's attacking quality, and I do think they will get 1 goal. It's then just a question, can Stoke breach Burnley's titanium defence, as it were? My opinion, I don't think they will. I think Burnley are looking pretty strong on that front. So I'm going to go for a narrow 1-0 away victory to Burnley. Our penultimate game sees Swansea take on Portsmouth. I think part of the prediction should be knowing, can Portsmouth actually play a game? Because right now that's 2 postponed games relating to Portsmouth in a row. And as a result of QPR winning last night, Portsmouth are now rock bottom again in the Championship. So the pressure immediately goes back onto them to try and get these results. Swansea, They've actually had a bit of an inconsistent run of form at the moment, but again, like was with Bristol City, have played some really tough teams within the top 6 recently, have been involved in some very close games with them. I think Burnley is a really good example of those. But Swansea have been involved in some really good results against teams near the top. That win against Norwich, for instance, is a really good example too. So I do think Swansea, as a team, they're starting to improve. They are starting to find more goals. And I think Luke Williams is now starting to ingrain the possession stats. I think they've actually held the second highest average possession stats out of all Championship teams so far this season, Swansea. So we're going to have a lot of the ball here. But Portsmouth can attack teams on the break. So Swansea do need to be wary of that. Prediction here, though. I think if Swansea play anything like they did against Derby, I think they'll win. But the trickiness in this prediction is how Portsmouth are going to be, because I've still not seen them after the international break. I think I'm going to back a Swansea win. I'm going to go for a 2-0 win to Swansea. I think the turbulence that Portsmouth have had with the games being postponed quite recently, I think will affect them for a tiny bit. It's difficult enough rescheduling 2 games in the busiest period of the year. I think they are going to have to somehow just try and find something about that. But ultimately, I think it'll take Portsmouth a little bit to adjust, and then Portsmouth will start attacking again. But I think Swansea will go back to winning ways as well. I had a great win over Derby. I think they'll carry that on here. Let me know what you think, though. Our last game, guys, is Derby Sheffield Wednesday. So Derby involved in that defeat against Swansea, as I mentioned. It was a pretty uninspiring home performance. I think just Derby grew very frustrated that they did not know how to deal with Swansea holding on to the ball. They really didn't give Derby a chance. Even though at Derby invite teams to Preston, they typically find a way to dominate still with chances, but they didn't really do that. It was a bit of a poor performance, unfortunately, for them. They'll be wanting to back that up with a positive performance here, but they're facing a Sheffield Wednesday side who had not won away from home for quite a while. They've managed to win away from home this time around against Hull City. Bit of patient play, but they got their first penalty in over a year, I believe. And then ultimately they scored again to make it 2-0. A comfortable win in the end for Sheffield Wednesday. And it's still, not particularly safe as of yet. In fact, both of them are really close in the table. I think both are only separated by 2 points. So they're both comfortably in that mid-table position at this moment of time. So could be a bit of a boring stalemate here. But honestly, I think we will see a competitive game between both these sides. Prediction here, I think I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Derby's home form has not been as strong as it has been. Sheffield Wednesday are starting to improve and picking up the occasional point or even 3 points now. So I do think both of them will draw a bit of a stalemate here. I think it'll end as a draw. And I do think it's just going to be a classic mid-table battle. But let me know what you think of my score as well. I think it's going to be a pretty close one. So there you have it, guys. That is my score predictions for Week 18. Let me know what you think of them in the comments down below. And feel free to also predict those games as well to score points on the Lexalexus Football Prediction League. That'll wrap it up for today. Please do like, subscribe, and share if you can as well. All of that really, really does help the channel. So this will be my last video before my exam regarding Week 19, because I think that's another midweek set of games. I'll probably release that on the Tuesday like I did with this weekend, or weekday I should say as well. So keep your eyes out. I will be trying to do it, but it is really, really exhausting. I'm nearly there, and then I can celebrate December and Christmas properly. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary for signing in this video, and as always, I'll see you guys soon, and enjoy Week 18. Take care, everyone.